Hey guys, it's me, Natalie, again, here with another video. If you haven't been to my channel before, I make videos on mental health, gaming, and I also make vlogs. It's kind of random, it's not a very cohesive brand, but that's what I got. And if you want to support my content, I recently moved exclusively over to Patreon, so I will be updating my Patreon with more exclusive vlogs and fun stuff like that. Pledges start at just $1, and with $1 you get access to all my very exclusive vlogs. Hello. Yeah, and make me feel cool. So anyway, that being said, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button if you want to be cool. Okay, so I said in my diet culture rant video that I was going to make a video on intuitive eating. So this is my video on intuitive eating. As some of you know, I used to have an eating disorder from middle school through college, and I have since recovered, but I still have lingering disordered eating thoughts and kind of a restrictive or restrained mindset when it comes to food. Though I feel like a lot of people do, because diet culture is very pervasive. And if you want to hear me rant about that, I will link that video up there. Yeah, makes me mad. Anyway, during the height of COVID, I noticed that I was having a lot more eating disorder thoughts more frequently. So I decided to hire a registered dietitian that specialized in intuitive eating. And that was about 4 months ago. And since that journey has started, I learned quite a few things and definitely gone through some mental changes. First, I guess I'll explain what intuitive eating is. Basically, if there was no such thing as dieting, intuitive eating would just be called eating. But since there is dieting, there is now an alternative to dieting known as intuitive eating. Basically, it's just like a philosophy of eating created by 2 registered dietitians, and there's 10 main principles of intuitive eating. The first principle is to reject the diet mentality. And a good way to do this is to read a little bit about why diets don't work. I highly recommend reading the book Untitled Chapter by Christy Harrison. That's what I read, and that really convinced me to get on the bandwagon of rejecting the diet mentality. Say no to diets. The next principle is to honor your hunger. So instead of using like a meal plan or counting calories to decide what you're gonna eat, you use your internal hunger cues and like what you're craving to decide what to eat. So intuitive eating requires getting to know your body and what your hunger signals are. And if you have eaten by counting calories for a long time and not based off of your hunger, it can take a little while to get used to doing that again. But basically it just means eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. Okay, number 3, the next one is making peace with food. This basically just means you're giving yourself unconditional permission to eat food. You can eat when you're hungry, whatever you want, doesn't matter. And this principle isn't to be like, oh yeah, just eat whatever you want. When you're eating in a restrictive mindset where you have forbidden foods like ice cream and cookies, the idea of eating whatever you want is probably going to be binging on ice cream and cookies. But if you make peace with food and you can eat ice cream and cookies whenever you want, eating whatever you want is going to look more balanced. You're not going to just want ice cream and cookies all the time. You're going to want a sandwich and maybe some cereal sometimes, scrambled eggs, I don't know, whatever. Making peace with food can actually really help with eating treats in moderation, because when things are forbidden, there comes this thing called like the Last Supper effect. So like if you're around your forbidden foods and you have one, then all of a sudden you've had like 20 cookies because this is the last time you're ever having cookies and they'll be forbidden tomorrow. I'll never have them again. So anyway, there is science to back up all these principles, and this is actually kind of interesting. All right, number 4 is to challenge the food police. And that means not labeling foods good or bad, or like being good or bad for eating certain foods. So like you weren't bad because you had a piece of cake, and you weren't being good because you had a salad at lunch. You just had a salad and you just had a piece of cake, and not to make it anything more than that. Because when you start messing around morality in terms of like food, then you start creating like, people are better or worse for certain food choices, and It can lead to like shame, which actually increases disordered eating and overeating and all that kind of jazz. So it's just not helpful. It promotes fat phobia and putting blame on people for like their body size and stuff like that. And that's not nice, and we don't want to do that. So, challenge the food police. Food has no morality. It's just food. All right, number 5 is satisfaction factor. So that means not only eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're full, but making food choices based off of what would feel satisfying to you in the moment. And granted, this definitely has a lot of privilege involved, but it also means like realistically, like I don't know if you want escargot and champagne every day, but it also means just like within your budget. Intuitive eating definitely requires privilege of not living in a very food insecure environment, but you don't have to be wealthy to do it. Staying with what's reasonable with your budget and picking foods that taste good that you can afford. And also eating an amount of food that feels best for you. So getting like in touch with your hunger and eating to achieve that level of fullness. And that is also basically principle 6, which is feel your fullness. So like being in touch with your fullness and what level of fullness feels best for you. And then 7 is be kind to yourself, practice self-care, so that you're not using food as a coping mechanism for your emotions, but doing self-care and nourishing yourself in order to tend to your emotions. All right, and 8 is to respect your body. That means accepting whatever your natural set point weight is when you're eating enough food to nourish your body. Because resistance and trying to force yourself to be a smaller weight that your body really wants to be requires you to always be on a diet for the rest of your life.
Resistance is futile.
Intuitive eating involves accepting your natural set point weight, which is just the weight that your body prefers to be at when it's getting the adequate amount of nutrition that it needs. And so you gotta accept yourself, and also that helps contribute to promoting body diversity and promoting dignity of people of all shapes and sizes. So in order to fully do that, you have to apply it to yourself too. So, and that's something I always try to keep in mind, because that's something that's important to me. And if I'm going to promote that to other people, I should also, apply it to myself. All right. And then number 9 is movement. And the idea is not to call exercise, but to refer to it as movement, because we're much more likely to exercise and exercise consistently over time, sustainably, if we think of it more as movement and being active and getting our heart rate up in a way that's fun. And for me, that involves like when I go for a jog, I don't time it, and I stop and take a walk whenever I want, and I just kind of like listen to my music and go for a jog. And I'm not trying to train for the Olympics. I'm just trying to enjoy my time. And also another thing I really like is going for long walks and listening to audiobook. That's pretty fun. I like doing that a lot. All right, and the final one is number 10, which is to honor your health. So this just involves, trying to pick a variety of foods so that you're getting the nutrition you need, but also not getting too hung up on it and trying to be like perfectly healthy. Eating one snack of something that has a lot of sugar in it isn't gonna make or break your diet. It's totally fine. It doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden an unhealthy person. So it's just kind of promoting balance and flexibility and not getting too hung up on doing things perfectly, because mental health is just as important as physical health, because they're connected and they feed off of each other. We know obsessing about external factors like weight and calories can actually hurt mental health, so it's really better for us to rely more on our internal cues. That being said, that there aren't any other medical conditions going on. So in my experience for the last few months is that I had a really hard time trusting my body and to rely on my internal hunger cues and trust my gut, I guess, versus thinking about how many calories I should have that day. And also not weighing myself anymore. I don't know why, but it just feels really weird and I don't like it. I kind of miss trying to control my weight. When I would get to a higher end of a certain range, I would like restrict my food intake for a few days till I got to the range that I wanted to be in. And it's been anxiety provoking not to do that anymore, because I'm like, oh my god, what if I just keep getting larger and larger and larger and larger? Which, first of all, it's like, well, like, so what? If eating what you need to eat and that's the size that you are, then that's the size that you are, right? But also just like being realistic, like I'm not gonna just like grow forever, you know, like unless I'm binging, which I'm not. Learning to like trust my body and that I will be what I need to be, and whatever I am, it's okay. I don't need to count calories. I can just listen to my hunger cues and, you know, ask myself what would taste good in this moment that I have access to. So though it's been really anxiety provoking to not be able to control myself with my weight, it's also pretty nice to not arbitrarily go hungry for several days because I want to be in a certain number range that has no purpose whatsoever other than to give me a false sense of, you know, control and security. So even though it's really tempting to like go back to it and like restrain my eating again, I feel more strongly that that's not something that I want to do. It's not something that I want to stand for, and it's not something that I think anyone should ever have to do. And so I'm not going to do it. Though I really can't shake how like tempting it is to go back to being like that. And one thing I've been trying to do is eliminate my brain's fear of food scarcity, which happens if you've been a chronic dieter and you randomly self-impose famine on yourself, and then your brain's always remembering that sometimes we don't have food. So something I've been trying to work on is eliminating the sense of food insecurity. So I've been keeping a cookie jar. It's one of my little experiments. And since having a cookie jar with treats around whenever I want, I have found that I'm much more likely to eat cookies in moderation now that I can have them whenever I want. And sometimes I don't even remember that they're there. I just totally forget they're there. And before doing intuitive eating, I would like never even have cookies in the house because I wouldn't trust myself to not like eat 10 of them in one sitting, because, you know, like they're like, oh my god, like a bad food that I shouldn't eat. But now that I'm allowed to eat them whenever I want, I can A, enjoy them, which is super awesome because they're delicious, and B, eat one or maybe two, and I've had a great time. Yeah, I've been reading a lot of studies and intuitive eating books about stuff like that and food insecurity, and when you eliminate that, you're actually less likely to overeat, because the number one triggering event to a period of overeating is a period of undereating. Who would have thought? So far, that's been my experience. I've had a cookie jar and I haven't gone on a diet, and that's been pretty cool. Though I have a lot of like fears with letting go of like numbers, trying to control my body type and size and weight and food intake and all that kind of stuff. So it's freeing and liberating, but also like kind of terrifying. Though it also is like something so silly because it's just to eat. If there was no such thing as dieting, this would just be eating. And I'm having like this whole video talking about how traumatic learning how to just eat is. Just eat it. Just eat it. That's what diet culture does. Diet culture sucks. Anyway, I hope this video was helpful or entertaining, or I don't know. Maybe you want to try intuitive eating too, and that would be super dope. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.